You can see here in our webinar archive, this is the stuff we followed around in day one, and then day two, we talked about character creation and customization. And today we're going to talk about, if we go to upcoming, we're going to talk about animation, all kinds of animation. We're going to spend about roughly half of the live demo time in today's webinar on facial animation, different types of facial animation. And a lot of you have asked me, stuff for questions like, how do we, what's the correct procedure to go through for, when you do your facial animation, what's the best workflow to use? So I'm going to kind of show you kind of the workflow that I normally follow when I'm creating my animations, doing facial animation, and the body animation, very similar as well. We'll just do a couple of basic body animation things, and then we'll move on to the Q&A. Okay, so as always, we have a few things to cover at the very beginning. We are recording this webinar for posterity in the future. If you miss something or if I go too fast, you can always review the video a little bit later. We are recording it, so we'll send it to you via email. And we're also going to be sending you a survey. All right, so make sure you fill out that survey and let us know what you think about the webinars, any suggestions you have for future webinars, and so on and so forth. And we will get that data taken down, and we will also send you a 10% discount code for the content store. Okay, so make sure that you fill out that survey for us so we can help to improve our webinars in the future and get to the topics that you really want to hear about. All right, and we are live streaming this on YouTube as well if you want to watch on YouTube. However, we do have a Q&A session at the very end of this webinar. We'll have our third and final Q&A session. So if you still have questions, feel free to put those in the Q&A section of your Zoom panel there. And we will get to those in the last 10 minutes. We won't be answering questions from the YouTube live stream. Just be aware of that. So if you want to ask questions, you have to ask them from the Zoom webinar panel there. Okay, I think we don't really have much else to discuss other than to get right down to the meat and potatoes of the animation stuff. Again, any questions you guys have, put them in the Q&A section there, and I will be more than happy to answer those questions in the last little bit of our webinar. So today we're going to talk about, like I mentioned, first half is going to be mostly facial motion capture. The second half is going to be kind of body animation, and we'll move on from there. Okay, so you may remember our webinar, the video we've gone through already a couple of times. We're going to be focusing on part 2 in this webinar today, because part 2 is going to be exclusively about animation. Okay, so let's go ahead and play it back, and we're going to be basically recreating this whole scene in the next hour or so. Let go of her, you snake.
Oh, help me, Jim.
You'll never take me alive, Jim. We'll see about that.
Oh, Jim, you saved me. Jim.
Oh, Jim. All right. So in case you're kind of wondering about the weird voices on this project, those voices are all done by myself. I don't have an army of voice actors available at my whim to do some voices for me. So I just kind of did my voice and pitched it up and pitched it down in a certain program called Audacity. If you want to learn more about that, I can show you in the Q&A section there as well. I'll be more than happy to do that for you. Okay, so we are going to recreate this. The transition at the beginning here, if you want to learn more about this transition, I'll show that to you at the end, but basically what I want to focus on right now is I want to focus on the animation aspect of facial animation and body animation. So we're going to delete the transition frame there, or a little transition asset there, and we will continue on with our live demo. Okay, so we're going to basically be recreating everything, but we need to do it from scratch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here to the top and exit out of camera record mode, just so I can move freely without having to worry about creating animation on my camera. We'll talk briefly about camera animation later on. Okay, so I'm going to select my character here, Jim, Super Spy Jim. Right-click him and select Remove Object Animation. Basically what this does is just removes all the animation on our character. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing for our other characters right here. Whatever her name is. Call her, what's her name? And gangster dude up here, we'll right click him and remove object animation. So now nobody has animation. I'm also going to press F3 and go into the timeline, just because when we're editing, when we're doing our editing, I don't want the music or the sound effects to be kind of, irritating everyone, because in the webinar they'll just be creating extra noise. So I'm going to go up here to my project tracks, okay, and go to sound effects, music, open all these up here, and let's make sure that we delete them. That we just have this one here. The human hit sound, okay, and then we have the other one, but we just delete them, and then we'll delete our bend sound as well. If you may recall, in the first day of the webinar, we talked about bend sound and how to add music to your scene, and I'll talk more about that later if you guys want to learn more about that. Okay, but let's get to work on the animation. So first thing first is we have super spy Jim running towards the scene. Now, we talked about the difference between root motions and transform motions in, I think it was the last day of the webinar. If you want to learn more about that, or if you want to review, feel free to ask me in the Q&A again. But I'm just going to go to my animation tab here, and we're going to go to motions, and we're going to go to G3. Let's just move this over a little bit so we can see the names. G3 mission moves, and move, we have this run. Okay, there's a run down here. And so we're just going to be using the, as you may recall, the one with the lines behind it is the root motion. So we're going to just double click on run forward. And there you go. He runs forward just like this. Okay, so he runs from one point to the next. We're going to close these ones right here, and I'm going to use object related track here. We talked about this previously. And go to the motion track, because that's where our run forward clip is going to be. Now, in case you weren't here for part 1 or part 2, by holding the Alt key and scrolling your mouse wheel, you can zoom in and out of your timeline, which is super, super useful. Okay, again, that's holding the Alt key and scrolling up and down. Okay, so here's our run forward. Now you may think, hey, we have this run forward clip, we can just loop it, right? So up here, you can go to make sure that we have loop enabled. We can click and drag on the loop, make it loop 3 times or something. So you may think that'll make him go forward 3 times. Well, what's going to happen is we transition from one clip to the next, he's actually going to go back to the original transform position like this. Okay, so you can see right there, there's a little line between the clips because we've looped it, but it's going to return him back to his original transform position, the root position. So that's not what we want. So we have to Control Z that a couple times and go back to our regular one. Basically what happens whenever you apply these root motions, it's going to analyze the transform data, the position your character is in, and it's going to start the animation from that position. So if you loop it, basically you're just making 3 copies of the same transform position. So it's going to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Okay. Hopefully that is clear as mud. And any questions later you can ask me. So again, we're just going to apply it one more time from the content manager. Okay. So now we have it starting here and continuing on. Okay. We don't have it going back to the root position. And he's going to stop right here. So again, we have the loop, and we're going to now apply the run forward end. Okay. Did we apply that? Yes, we did. Okay, there we go. Okay, so now he's going to be ending his run like this. So, very, very simple to make your character run forward. And again, this is in the Mission Moves content pack, so you have to purchase that separately from the content store. But there are runs and walks in the default folders as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and just play that back. Run and end. Okay. Okay, so that's just a brief, review of how to get your character to run forward. Now we're going to focus all on the facial animation. We're going to be doing facial animation for the next 20 minutes or so here. Okay, so I'm going to close down the motion track here. We don't need the motion track anymore. This is all for body stuff. And we're going to open the face tracks. Okay, and the face tracks, you'll see a number of different subtracks here: voice clip, facial clip, and face motion. We'll talk about all these as we go through our webinar. Okay, so right after he ends his run, so he's going to come here and he's going to just say something like, "Oh, what's the script?" He says, "You'll never catch me." I forget. Okay, let's go to create script anyways. Forget my own script and go to wave file here. We're going to import in a wave file, which I've already prepared. my superior voice acting. And we're going to load in 201. Okay, so this is scene 2, which is the first clip. I've just kind of named them.
Let go of her, you snake.
All right. So that's the first line. Let go of her, you snake. I think hopefully this is loud enough for you guys. Try and make it a bit louder, just in case. All right. So
let go of her, you snake.
All right. So you see in the face track, don't worry about these run forwards and their face motion. Those are just kind of null clips right now. So what we're going to do is open up the voice clip tracks. And you'll see we have this Visine clip, okay? This is the clip that we're talking about here. And below that, we have a wavelength of our audio. So
let go of her, you snake.
And below that, we have a number of different keyframes in the lips track, okay? And these keyframes are the lip syncing keyframes. All right, so every keyframe here basically represents a different viseme shape, okay? So visemes are the visual representation of a phoneme, which is like a sound that your voice makes, okay? Sound that you make, your mouth makes. So for example, let's take a look at this one here, which is woo, okay? So if I double click on the keyframe there, it's gonna open up our lips editor. And you can see we have this viseme here called woo. So whenever you make a woo sound, your lips make this shape, okay? So woo, and that's called a viseme, all right? Now, what we're going to do is we're just going to basically start by cleaning up the lip syncing a little bit. So we're going to take a few minutes on lip syncing. Now, there may be a certain amount of lag in the webinar, but hopefully this is fairly real time for you guys, because the lips can move really fast, especially in a clip like this. So what I'm going to do is we can actually just go ahead and all these keyframes represent mouth shapes. Now notice that this one is K and G, but he's actually not making any shape with his mouth. And the reason for that is because sometimes the automatic lip sync will just generate a key and take the expressiveness down to 0. So when the expressiveness slider here is at 0, basically it's not making any shape. It's 0 expressiveness. But if you increase that expressiveness, eventually he'll make the K sound, okay, or the K viseme shape with his mouth. So this is a k, 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 or a j, j, j shape with his mouth. We don't want that. In fact, this is actually kind of a redundant keyframe. So we can actually remove all these keyframes at the beginning here. And this very first keyframe, let's just change it to none, okay? And we can change the expressiveness to 100. So it's just a basic neutral keyframe. So right here is where he starts to say something like let, okay? So right here is where we want to start our first keyframe. So we're going to click and drag this one here. I mean, the automatic lip sync works pretty good, especially for 2D characters. Generally, you don't really have to modify something with 2D characters, because it's much easier to suspend how do I say this? It's much easier to just kind of suspend the belief of the character's mouth shapes when you have a 2D character, as opposed to like a very detailed 3D character, like in a modern video game like Modern Warfare or something, or a movie like Toy Story 4 or whatnot. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this one here. This is the TLD. So this is the le. You can see once he goes there, he has a let sound. Let. Okay, so then we have another T right here. We can actually just clean up all these keyframes if we want, but we're going to keep some of them just so we don't have to add so many. So it says let go. Okay, so from let, this one here, we can just delete this one. We don't need that. Let go. So we can basically just go from a let to a go to a woo right away, because it's let go. If you say it yourself and you look in the mirror, you'll see it'll just be like let go. So it'll be like from this shape to this shape. Let go. Okay, go. Now here we have a the. Okay, so it says let go of her. Okay, so here let's use this previous keyframe that was previously a woo, and let's change this one to a V. Okay, actually, you know what? I'm gonna click and drag and just delete all these keyframes, just because we can add our own later. So let go of her.
go of
Okay, so this one we want to change to F and a F or NV. Okay, so this one right here. So v. Okay, so this is the shape your mouth makes with a f or a v. Okay, so let go of her. This one needs to be an like an ER. Okay, her, and then you can change the expressiveness, obviously to 100. Let go of her. U, and then here we have another U. U. This one needs to be a S. Snake. And then we have an N. And then this one is an A. So ache, like an A. You snake. And then we have a K. K. And then we have a none. Okay. So basically, you know, that's the kind of way I do it. I just kind of go through each phoneme, like each sound by each sound, and you can just double click and add any keyframe you want there. Okay, so now we have like this.
Let go of her, you snake.
Okay, and it looks a little bit better. Okay,
let go of her, you snake.
Just a bit more detailed. So that's generally the way that I start off my facial animation. So I'm taking you kind of through my workflow. I go through the lip syncing first and clean up the lip syncing, because if you have expression already before you do the lip syncing, it can maybe, like, you know, mess up your lip syncing a little bit, or just kind of make it not as clear. So I generally recommend having your lip syncing, doing your voice clip first, and cleaning up your lip syncing before you add expression. Okay, so let's go ahead and add some expression to this. Okay, so let go of her, you snake.
Let go of her, you snake.
Okay, so what we're going to do is, at the very beginning, the very first frame, actually, let's just stay at this frame here. What we're going to do is now we're going to go into the face key editor. Okay, so the face key editor right here. And we touched on this briefly, I believe, in the second tutorial or second webinar day. Now there's a few different areas here in the face key editor. And I'm gonna twirl up the timeline a little bit more, just slide it up a little bit, just so you kind of can know which section of the which tracks here correspond to which section, which tab in the face key editor. Okay, so we're basically done with the voice clip stuff right now. We don't need to worry about voice clip stuff, so we'll go ahead and close that down. And what I'm going to do is twirl down facial clip. Okay, now in facial clip, there's three different sections here. There's the head, three different tracks rather, head, face, and eye. Okay, we'll talk about head and eye a little bit later on, but right now we're only going to deal with face. Okay, so we don't need to worry too much about this stuff right now. We'll get to this a little bit later on. The facial motion track is the stuff we're gonna talk about right now. But let's go ahead and get started first. So I'm going to go ahead to template over here. Okay, so template. These are basically templates that are used. I use these all the time because I'm kind of a lazy animator. Basically, these templates are just different preset expressions, so groups of expressions. So every part of the character's face is changed. So if we go, for example, to happy 01, notice it creates a keyframe in the face track. Okay, so whenever you add an expression, it's going to add a keyframe in the face track. Okay, so happy 1, happy 2, happy 3. There's a number of different happy expressions here, but you know, you think he's chasing after this guy who kidnapped his girlfriend. He's probably not too happy. So we're going to go to the angry ones here. Okay, so there's angry 1, angry 2, and there are various levels of anger. You know, I like this evil one, because he looks very evil. Now, the cool thing about these expressions, these expression templates, is you can modify the expression level on them, and it'll actually have quite a strong effect. So say, for example, we have evil 1. So he looks pretty evil here, maybe a little too evil for my taste. Let's tone down the expressiveness. And you'll notice that when we tone down the expressiveness, he goes back almost into a neutral expression there, okay? So just like this. And you can use that slider to determine the amount of evilness you want in his eyes and his facial expression. Okay, let's maybe use about 75% evil. He's not too upset yet. Okay, so that adds a keyframe in the face track. Now the problem here is that he's going to have that same facial expression. What's going to happen is it's going to blend from a neutral expression. So you'll see, oops, just kind of clicked on the snow accidentally. Notice that his expression will get angrier as he gets closer to frame 60, okay? At frame 1, his face, we're gonna have to go way back here. At frame 1, his face is gonna be neutral, okay? But you can see as he moves along, so from this keyframe to this keyframe, he's gradually gonna get angrier. And we don't really want that. We kind of just maybe want him to be, running. And then when he finally arrives and the camera focuses on his face, so maybe when he stops running at this point right here, then we want his expression to begin to be angry. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna just double click in that track there, and that'll bring up our face key editor. That's another shortcut, by the way. You can just double click in the track and it'll load up your face key editor. And we're gonna go template, and we're just gonna set this one to neutral, okay? So then you can see from here to here is when the transition is going to take effect. So from here to here, he's gonna transition from neutral to angry, okay? So then when he's angry, and we zoom in on his face, so let's just see that really quick. Normal, angry, normal, angry, okay? And now we get started.
Let go of her, you sneak.
Okay, now what I'm gonna do next is, I've already showed you these templates, okay? That's a very brief overview of the templates, and it's fairly simple, okay? There's not really too much other details to go into. We're gonna go to transform and deform here, okay? So first one is transform. Now transform is where you basically transform the position of the different elements on your character's face. So let's go ahead and just, before we move on, we're gonna just create another evil keyframe later on in the face track. Let's go ahead and do that.
Let go of her, you sneak.
Okay, and then here, we're gonna go to template, angry and evil, and add another keyframe there. Okay, so now he's evil throughout the duration. But maybe when he's talking, we want to have, his nose flare or something, or his eyebrows kind of get a little bit angrier. So what we can do is we can use these subtracks here for transform and deform. Now transform will basically change the scale, rotation, and position of your facial feature. So for the mouth, I can, I can stretch the mouth out like this if I want, okay? And when I do that, you're probably wondering, hey, where's the keyframe here? Well, the keyframe in this case won't add into the face track. It adds into one of these facial motion tracks called face transform, all right? So hopefully this is easy to follow along with. We have facial transform, facial sprite, and facial deform. We're not gonna talk about facial sprite. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but we're gonna talk about facial transform and facial deform right now, okay? So if we go down here, you can see we have face transform track and face deform track. And we have that keyframe in the face transform track. That's because I modified that mouth, okay? And you can stretch it, twirl it, whatever you want, spin it around, that's facial transform, okay? And if you stretch it out, you rotate it, you're like, oh man, I totally made a mistake here, then just go ahead and press this button here, reset sprite, okay? And reset sprite will take it back to the original data from the motion clip up here, okay? This facial clip. Okay, so that's basically we have a neutral keyframe here. And what we're gonna do is, maybe from here to here, we want to have his nostrils flare. So as he begins talking, we want his, let's change his eyebrows first since we're in the transform, okay? So I'm gonna take the eyebrows, right here. You can see the selection box is quite big for this. I'm not sure why, but we can just rotate these eyebrows and maybe move them up like this. Move one of his eyebrows up, okay, just like this, and maybe rotate it upwards like that. Okay, so what's going to happen from here to here, we have this, we have to reset the sprite again there. Oops, not sure what's happening there. It should go back to normal there. All right, we'll work with that anyways. From here to here, then we have that eyebrow raising like this, okay? It's like this. So
let go of her.
You can see his eyebrow raises from there to there. And maybe at the same time, we want the face deform. We want the nostrils to kind of raise a little bit. So let's double click in the deform track. And when we double click on the deform track, you can see it automatically goes to our deform tab. And let's select the nostril left, okay? You can see there's a big selection box for the nostril left. Let me just check the chat window here. Yeah, okay, good. So nostril, we're gonna just basically, we don't need to have this many control points for our nostril deform. We can just go to like 3 by 3 and change it to something like this. We can just take that left nostril up like that, make him like angry like that, okay? Maybe take the center a bit down a little bit further. Okay, and then take the right nostril and zoop, take that up on the edge there. And we can maybe take the nose and just like, you know, bring that up and kind of, maybe we can take the nose and kind of scrunch it, okay? Just like this. Oops, we accidentally moved the head. We don't want to talk about that yet. Let's Control Z that. The control point happens to be in the exact same spot as our, oh, we just reset everything there. Make sure we have the control point selected, not this. They're in the same spot, so it's kind of hard. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we have this point here, this keyframe where his nose is deformed. But let's go ahead and take that keyframe to over here because we want the transition to start from here. So let's just double click in that keyframe or that track right there again. And we're going to nostril left, reset sprite, nostril right, reset sprite, and nose, reset sprite, take everything back to normal. Okay, so we have 2 keyframes in the transform track and 2 keyframes in the deform track. What that's going to do is, you can see it will scrunch his nose at the same point as it his eyebrow raises. Okay, so there's the transform track, the transform for his eyebrow, and the deform for his nose. Okay. Hopefully I wasn't talking over my own voice there. So there's a transform track for the eyebrow, transform keyframes for the eyebrow rather, and deform keyframes for the nose. Okay, so we can just see from there. We just if we don't want to hear the voice, by the way, when we're scrubbing back and forth, we can always go over here and take our actor voice volume down to 0. Okay, so since we're just focusing on the deform and stuff right now, we're not focusing on the voice anymore. We can see that. So let go of her, you snake. Okay, so let's go ahead and take that voice actor volume back up and play back really quick.
Let go of her, you snake.
Okay, now after he says that, maybe we want it to go back to the default evil template expression there. Okay, so what we can do there's a very easy way to do that. I'm going to click and drag and select both of these clips or both of these keyframes right here in the transform and the deform track. And I'm going to right click on either one of them and press copy. Okay. So when we want to begin the transition back to the default evil expression, that's where we want to put these keyframes.
Snake.
Okay, so after he says snake, maybe we can just start there. So let's go right click and paste. Okay, and that's going to paste those 2 keyframes there. And the default keyframes are the ones right here. So let's copy both of those. Right click, copy, and let's paste those over here, maybe a few frames later. Okay, so then he's going to return back to the default evil expression. Okay, so then we have this.
Let go of her, you snake.
Okay, very simple. And I mean, generally you don't want the movements of your facial features to be so uniform like this. So maybe, for example, we would have the nose deform, and then we'd have the transform of the eyebrow happen slightly later. Okay, because it looks too robotic if everything happens at the same time. So what you want to try and do here is maybe
let go.
So you'll see, let's take the volume down. You'll see now first the nose will curl up, will scrunch up, and then halfway through the eyebrow will begin to raise. Okay, that's just kind of a way to make things seem a bit more organic in terms of the animation as opposed to very robotic looking. So now we have this. Okay, and it just looks a bit better in my opinion, a bit more natural, if you can even say that for 2D characters. Okay, so that's that nostril deform, eyebrow transform. Now the last thing we're gonna throw on here is some head motion. Now there's a couple of different ways that you can add head motion to your character. The first way we're actually going to talk about the puppet facial puppet with the next character with the next example. But this character we're going to do a really quick facial head movement. Okay, just because his head also looks very robotic when it's just sitting in one spot there. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go back into the face key editor here, and what you can see here is this little gizmo, this little my cursor will change to a crosshairs right here, and at this point, if I click and drag it, I can actually move my character's head in a 360-degree fashion like this. Okay, and when I do that, where's it going to add a keyframe? It's going to add a keyframe in the head track there. Okay, so right here, we can go ahead and just select this keyframe right here, double click, and we can select default key. Whoops, we didn't want to do that. So we actually modified all the other stuff as well. Just make sure you have your character like double clicking at a keyframe there. And from here to here, maybe we can have him
Let go of her.
Have his head tilt slightly up. Okay, so
Let go of her, you snake.
let's make it a bit further because it just doesn't look as there you go. You can have his head go up like that, and then maybe down like that. You can see it adds another keyframe in the head track, and then up like this, and facing towards the evil character. So then you can see just a little bit of head movement.
Let go of her, you snake.
Okay. Now, if you find that the head movements are too
let go of her, you snake.
So it just adds a bit more expression
to
your
go of her, you snake.
Head movements. And then we'll just go ahead and double click here and add another keyframe. And then maybe here we can just go ahead and reset it back to the regular position, maybe something like that. Okay, so here we have it. Actually, maybe at the very beginning, I want his head to be facing forward as well. So I'm going to just go double click here, add a keyframe, and have him slowly face forward towards our character. Okay, because he's going to be facing to his left, or his right, our left.
Let go of her, you snake.
Okay, let's just delete this one. We don't need that keyframe.
Let go of her, you snake.
Okay, so that's kind of the workflow that I go through, when producing a facial animation manually. Now, obviously, you can save a ton of time by doing, facial mocap and facial puppet, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But I just wanted to go through the details first, the more detailed way that you can modify these things. And I did forget to mention here as well, if you click on the face motion track, you can find all the subtracks for each facial feature here as well. So I believe we modified the left brow of our character. So let's just open up the left brow track. You can see we have a left brow transform right here. So again, those two keyframes are for the left eyebrow. And we only use the transform tool, okay? So that means the left eyebrow has moved up like that and stays there.
You snake.
And from here to here, goes back down, okay? So there's a main keyframe in the face transform track. Okay, that's called an absolute key, and the different features have their own keyframes as well. Okay, so just keep that in mind. All right, I think that's going to be it for this guy here. So we're going to go ahead and focus on the next character now, since we spent a lot of time on the facial animation. We're going to just do some brief facial animation for the other character, but we can go ahead and apply a kind of a body motion to this character. So when he says,
let go,
when he starts his let go of her, you snake, we can just go to animation and G3 human, Turner's male and side. I believe there is a talk motion we can use here. Yeah, this one right here, talk S2 maybe. Let's just go ahead and apply that, double click it.
Of her, you snake.
Okay. But the talking animation is too long. So what I'm going to do is press F3 and go into the timeline here. Now we're going to close all the face tracks. We don't need any of the face stuff anymore. So let's close that down and open up our motion track. So I'm going to show you how you can shorten and break a motion. So it's a bit more in sync with your facial animation. So let's zoom out a little bit. So as he begins talking,
let go of her.
Maybe move this clip a little bit forward. Okay.
Let go of her, you snake.
And maybe we want to make it a little bit faster. So the way we can make a clip faster, we can make the motions faster, is by clicking right here and making sure that speed is toggled on as opposed to looping. So we looped earlier on, but now we're using speed. So if we take this clip and we just make it shorter, what's going to happen is going to speed up the clip.
Let go of her, you snake.
Okay, so I think that's okay.
Let go of her, you snake.
So as he says snake, his fist kind of clutches there, and then we can take him back to this default position here. But we don't want any of this all this other like pantomiming stuff later on. Okay, so as he brings his hands down like this, let's go ahead and just right click on the clip, and I'm going to select break. Okay, and I'm going to take the second part of the clip there and just delete it. Okay, so we just break it, and we just broke it, and
let go of her, you snake.
Okay, and this goes back into his default pose right here. And yeah, that's basically all I want to do for the body animation there. We're going to do a little bit more facial animation with the next character. Okay, so the next line, I believe, is the bad gangster dude over here. Let's go ahead and click him. And he's going to say something like, I believe his line is next. So let's go ahead and
let go of her, you snake.
So then the camera pans over to the bad dude a few frames later. We make the bad dude say something like, is he the next guy? Let's preview this first.
Ooh, help me,
it's
Jim.
the girl. All right, so we have to select the girl. She has to say, ooh, help me, Jim, first. Okay, so we'll select her, add her little wave file there, 02.
Ooh, help me, Jim.
Okay, but again, then she doesn't really seem very intent on getting him to help her because she has no expression. Okay, so let's make sure she has some expression. We'll just go for some expression from frame one. It doesn't really matter since she's not going to be in camera. But let's go ahead and do that same thing using the face key editor template, and I'm just going to use fear. This one right here. Okay, like fear 1. You can see now she looks pretty afraid. You can probably tone down that expressiveness a little bit, maybe something like that. Okay, you can see how those expression templates come in really handy. You can just click on something and here you have an expression already. Okay, so then we have Jim's running through the snow.
Let go of her, you snake.
Okay, so here, what I'm going to do with her here is I'm actually going to add some body animation to the character and a little bit of a head motion as well. So the body animation we're going to add here is we're going to go over here to body and animation. And this animation is found in Elastic Folks side. Okay, you should have this as default with Cartoon Animator 4 as well. Idle and talk, I believe. And it should be called stand 03. There's so much stuff I sometimes have to write it down. So stand 03, this one right here. Okay, so
you snake.
So as she says, ooh, help me, Jim, she's going to do this animation right here. So stand 03.
Ooh, help me, Jim.
Okay, so it's really weird hearing your own voice in that pitch. Anyways, okay, so the little scenario that I want to teach you here is how to remove animation from a certain body part. Okay, so we do have this stand 03 animation clip right here. Let's go ahead and play it back.
Ooh, help me, Jim.
But it's kind of weird because, you know, she can't really, she probably doesn't want to move her right arm. And even if she does move her right arm, let's get rid of the voice for now. You can see it looks weird because it's kind of going through, like, how does she tuck it under the guy's arm? You know, it doesn't look very realistic. So generally what I probably want to do here is just remove the animation from my character's right arm on this motion clip. Now you can only do this when you applied motion clips, okay? So let's go ahead and right click on this motion clip at this frame right here. And I'm going to go to remove motion and select my, actually in this case, it's going to be her left arm because I've flipped the character. So if you flipped your character, the arms are going to be kind of reversed, okay? So let's remove the animation from the left arm and play back. So you can see the top part of the left arm is has stopped, but the bottom part isn't. So we actually need to remove the motion from the left forearm as well. Remove motion from left forearm. Okay, so now we have this. Perfect. Okay, so now her left arm is coming up and her right arm is staying in position. Okay, and that's exactly the way we want it. So that's kind of a really quick and easy way to customize your motions, just by removing, by masking out certain body parts. Okay, let's go on to the next one here, which is the gangster. So let's make our voice track back up here.
Ooh, help me, Jim.
And then the gangster is going to say something like, "You'll never take me alive," or whatever. Okay, so let's go ahead and select the gangster dude. Now, the gangster I'm going to show you here looks a little bit weird because it almost looks like he's looking at us. He's not looking at Jim. All right, you know, he's a really bad actor. He's looking at the camera instead of at the character he's interacting with. So the way to resolve this, if you want to move your character's eyes position, you can always go to the face key editor. And this one is going to be in the morph tab. Okay, so if we go down here to open up the face track again, let's first add his little script there. You'll never take me alive.
You'll never take me alive, Jim.
Right, so there it's in the voice clip track. We don't need that. We're not going to modify that right now. Let's go ahead and it doesn't really matter what frame, but let's do that frame 1. And go to the face key editor here. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our characters. Actually, let's do it later on. So right now he's kind of looking this way. So as Jim starts to talk, or as he hears Jim approaching, we're going to add a default key. Okay. And if we twirl down the facial clip track, basically all the stuff in the facial clip track, the head, the face, and the eyes, these 3 tracks, these 3 subtracks are all from the morph and template tabs. Okay, so it's kind of very important to be able to organize this in your head because sometimes it can get confusing with all these other tracks under here under face motion. But face motion corresponds with transform, deform, and sprite. Okay, so face motion down here is transform, deform, and sprite. If we open it up, say for example, like left brow, you can see there's left brow T, S, and T. And those correspond with transform, sprite, and deform. Okay, so the sprite editor is over here, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but transform and deform are the tracks under here. If you add keyframes up here, it's only going to be for the template and the morph tabs. Okay, so let's take our character's eyes. We're going to click on both the eyeballs here. You can see they turn orange, evil orange when we select them. Let's go a couple frames down and let's click and drag, and we can move the eyes this way. Okay, so this is how you move facial features. You can click and drag the eyes, and I really only recommend doing this for the eyes. The mouth and everything like that, you can generally modify using the transform and deform. Okay, but if you want head movement or eye movement, I would recommend using these ones right here. Okay, now if you want to reset it, you can select clear right here, and then we can actually move our character's head. Now, the way I showed you before was by clicking and dragging on this little gizmo here, but you can also click on these 2 icons right here, head 3D move and head rotate, and then you can just click and drag, left click and drag outside of your character's head. Okay, so make sure you're not clicking on any of these features right here. Make sure you click and drag on a white area right here, and you can move it like that. Okay, so that's basically the other way to create head movement. So we'll just have him like that. And when we release the mouse key, you can see it adds a keyframe in the head track. Okay, so now we have this. So he's looking over at Jim and he's about to say something. Okay, well, he hears him coming.
Let go of her, you sneak.
Ooh, help me, Jim.
And then he says,
You'll
never take me alive.
You'll never take me.
Okay, now what I'm going to do here is instead of using the head motion, movement that I used before, I'm going to use my facial puppet tool. Okay, so we're going to use the facial puppet tool this time. Facial puppet tool is a really useful little tool that basically is for quick and dirty animation, and I'll show you what I mean here in a moment. The first thing you want to do is select the facial animation profile, and these are just kind of, I don't know, they have specific themes, but the themes you can experiment with whichever one you want. Let's try this wicked one, for example. And there's smiley, there's angry, there's sad, and there's happy profiles. So these are just going to add expressions. So let's use the angry one here, and let's press preview. And then to preview, you can press space. Okay, so you can see his eyes get really large and angry, and okay. So what you need to do is when you're ready to record, you can just go ahead and create by moving your mouse button around, by moving your cursor around, you can create expressions on your character. Now, if you don't want those expressions, you can go ahead and do this. Let's press space to stop the preview. You can go ahead and clear the selection. So when you clear selection, that means nothing is going to be puppeted and the buttons become disabled. If you only want to puppet the head movements, you're already happy with your expressions, you can click on these two buttons here. Again, rotate and 3D move, and then preview. And then when you preview, it's only going to be the head movement, okay? Just like this. The expressions are not going to change. So, you know, you can, and if you only want, say, for example, to have the eyebrows, you can do the eyebrows only and preview. And now only the eyebrows will move, okay? So this is a very useful technique to learn, especially for quick and dirty animation, to mask out certain features on the facial puppet tool. And you can actually go through them one by one, and you can add different expressions in different recordings. So you can go, let's go ahead and test that out. So I'm going to basically take off the eyebrows right now. And let's go ahead and only do the head movement, okay? So we only have these two selected, and let's record, okay? So as he begins to talk, we're going to go ahead and record. Press record, and when you're ready, get your mouse ready and press space.
You'll never take me alive, Jim.
Okay. Now you can see his mouth didn't move, but what that did is that created a puppet clip, okay? And the puppet clip is basically contains, you can see all the keyframes added here, and those are just keyframes that were added from in these tracks by default, okay? So
you'll never take me alive, Jim.
Okay, so now you can see he has the head movement, which looks, you know, a lot more natural. But here you can see it kind of, his head kind of just kind of pops into place there. What you can do is you can actually click and drag on the edge of this clip and create a transition area. Okay,
yeah.
So click and drag on the edge of the puppet clip to create a transition area, so it's not such a...
You'll never take me alive, Jim.
Okay, but I think he looks a little bit too happy. You know, I think he looks too happy to be saying what he's saying. So let's go ahead and use that same, maybe we'll just take one eyebrow or both eyebrows, and then we'll record over it again. So I'm going to go ahead and record.
You'll never take me alive, Jim.
Okay, so now we created a new puppet clip, but this puppet clip contains eyebrow motion as well. Okay. Oh, we actually recorded over the head movement as well. Let's Control Z and undo that.
You'll never take
me. Control Z one more time. Okay, there we go. Okay, so this time I don't want to do the head movement, so I'm going to release both the head movements, and we want to have only the eyebrows. So we can record one more time.
You'll never take me alive, Jim.
Okay, so then that creates another clip. So basically,
you'll never take me alive, Jim.
You can go through.
You'll never take me alive.
Different times and just kind of record over whatever you want. But again, the easiest way, as always, you know, is if you're a lazy animator like myself, is just to use these templates. Okay, so let's go ahead and use the angry template, and we can actually just take this clip and delete it. Okay, and that takes us back to the default.
You'll never.
Okay, and let's do this with the head movement, and let's record.
You'll never take me alive, Jim.
Okay, so what's going to happen now is let's just again create that little transition area so it's more natural, and then
you'll never take me alive, Jim.
Okay, so he looks really angry. Okay, good enough. And then if you want it to go back to you know, your regular expression from this angry expression, go a little bit further down here, go back into your face key editor, and under templates, just use the, I believe we had the evil one. There you go. And we'll take that expressiveness down to something a little bit more reasonable. And maybe rotate his head a little bit further back there as well. Okay, so basically it just extends the puppet clip and adds a couple more keyframes there. Okay.
Jim.
Happy Jim.
You'll never take me alive, Jim.
Okay, and if you right click on that that clip, you can break that clip. You can select all clips and you can import stuff. We'll talk about that in other future webinars or tutorials and so on and so forth. Okay, but as he's saying that, we have to do something really quick because we have about 10 minutes left in this webinar. So let's go ahead and do something really quick to his body. We're going to take his body and go over here to the 2D motion key editor. So as he's saying something, we're just going to basically lift his arm up. He's going to point and he's going to point at Jim. Okay. So what I want to do here is the 2D motion key editor. I'm just going to go ahead and press reset, or not reset, rather. Control Z that. Set key. Okay. And we're going to set a key for the full body. So we're going to get rid of all the facial stuff now. And you can see now we have the hip transform track that opens, okay, whenever we add a key. And if we move down, we want to basically from here to here have his arm move out, his left arm. Again, he's flipped as well, so we have to do everything in reverse. Move his arm up like this, and so we have this.
You'll never take me alive, Jim.
Okay, so notice that whichever bone we move, that track will appear in our timeline. So we move the right arm and right forearm. So you can see the body and the face have the same kind of naming. So we have the T for the transform and the S for the sprite. So as we're moving his arm up like this, what I also want to do is I also want to change the sprite on my character's hand, because it looks weird if his hand's actually facing the wrong way like that. He should be like pointing at Jim or something. So let's go ahead and use the sprite editor right here. Okay. So with the sprite editor selected, enabled, we're going to go ahead and just select his hand, and we're going to change that to a different hand symbol. So something like this one. Oh, that's facing the wrong way. There we go. This one should be good, facing this direction. Now you can see what happens is in the right hand sprite track, it adds a keyframe, okay? And we can move that keyframe earlier or later, okay? So if we want to change right here, let's actually move it a little bit further down. So notice what's going to happen is here, before that keyframe, the sprite will be this sprite, but after the keyframe, it's going to change to the point, okay, like that. So generally, we'll probably want to make that a little bit earlier, okay? So
you'll never take me alive, Jim.
Okay, and then maybe we can have add a bit more emphasis onto the arm animation there. Let's just go ahead and quickly go into our motion key editor again. Did we click it? There we go. And let's just take the whole arm up and down a little bit. So like this. Okay, and that adds a keyframe there. And then maybe down here, we'll have down here. So what's going to happen is
you'll never take me alive, Jim.
And then we can have it basically back down to the regular position. So I'm going to take the click and drag all these keyframes here, copy the original position, and then paste them all down here. His arm is going to return back to normal. So we have this little.
You'll never take me alive, Jim.
Now,
you'll
one
never
thing I want to point out is from here to here. Notice the arm movement is fairly. Let's get rid of that voice for now. It's really annoying. The arm movement is very linear. Okay, so it doesn't look as good when the arm movement is so linear. And you can see that adds the keyframes right here. So what we can do is let's go ahead and click on these. What is this? This is right arm transform. Yeah, so right arm transform. You can right click on that. You can select something like transition curve. Okay. Now transition curve will allow you to create a brief transition. Okay. Let's say, for example, let's use one that's very noticeable, like this end and a bounce. Notice that when we select end in a bounce, there's going to be sort of a bounce motion on our character's hand between this frame here, between this keyframe here and this keyframe here. So you want to select the keyframe that's at the end of the transition and create a transition on that keyframe. So this one here, end in a bounce, you can see his arm will kind of end in a bounce like this. We can do something like this step. If we do step, it won't change until it actually hits the keyframe. There's also this one here, stuttering start and end. So you can see that one like just stutters basically all the way. This one's a sudden start with an elastic end. So maybe this one would be a better one if he's like, to make it more dynamic, like his hand pops out and we say something like, "You'll never take me alive." Okay, so then we have this. Okay, and then obviously back when he goes down to his regular position, that looks kind of lame too. So this one, let's actually do something like decelerate. Okay, now decelerate, we can actually increase the strength of it. And this is kind of, it gets a bit more complicated, but basically what's happening is all the movement is going to be happening in the first few frames after this keyframe. There's not going to be much animation on the last frames. That's because it's decelerating. So all the animation is happening in this area here, and nothing's happening in the last like 75% of the transition area there. Okay, so if we go from here to here, again, that's maybe a little bit strong. We can take that down to like 70 maybe. There you go. Okay, that gets, there's a lot more detail we can go into with that kind of stuff, but I just want to show you the possibility of using those, tools all together. Okay, since we're running out of time, we've talked about sprite change, we've talked about the body keyframe and the transition curves. I'm not sure if we'll be able to get to Jim's motions right now. Let me see if there's anything important here. We have the basically the same thing as we did before. You got the kick. Oh, let's do the kick. Okay. So what I'm going to do is just for the kick, really quickly, I'm going to show you how to apply this kick to Jim. Okay. It doesn't really matter when it is. We can restore the original later on. Let's go ahead and add this kick to Jim. Okay. So don't pay attention to the timing of anything. I'm just going to go ahead and apply this kick to Jim. So the kick, I believe, is in mission moves. Again, this is a content pack you need to purchase from the content store, the mission moves and stunt. And there's a special kick. What's it called? It should be called kick, H-I-J-K. Yeah, we have this karate kick. Okay. So let's focus our project on this area now. So we have this, and let's actually add the sound effect in with this kick. Okay. Now to do that, I'm going to go to my project slider, sound effects here, and double click on the sound effect track, and we're going to add a hi-ya. Let me see which one is the hi-ya. I think it's the last one. This one.
We'll see about that. Hi-ya!
Okay, so it's like second part of this one. So we'll just go ahead and...
We'll see about that. Hi-ya!
Okay. Hi. What we can do is we can right-click in here and just break that and only use the second part where he says hi-ya. Okay. Actually, you know what? We probably want to actually add this to his script. So let's go ahead and do that really quick. Instead of the sound effects, because the script, you can actually extend the clip, and I'll talk more about that a little bit later. So oh, right, we have the volume set to 0. So there's his clip track right there.
We'll see about that. Hi.
Okay. Hi. So what we want to do is want to click in that, right click there and break this clip. We don't want the first part of the audio. So let's go ahead and just delete that. Okay, so we have this clip right here.
Hi-ya!
Okay, so what I want to do is click and drag that to coordinate with the kick.
Hi-ya!
Okay, it looks okay.
Hi-ya!
But what if we want to maybe extend it and make it a bit more dramatic? We can do that by, like I mentioned before, taking the speed and basically extending these clips. So let's take a look at the voice clip track right here. You can see the hi-ya right there. We can drag and stretch it out. Okay, so now it'll be something like hi-ya. Okay, and then we want to extend the kick to basically the same distance. Okay, so we're basically just extending both of these to a little bit longer. Hi-ya. Okay, maybe the kick is a little bit behind, so we can make that a little bit faster. Hi-ya. Okay, so then from here, we have that kick, pretty cool. Now let's create a couple of transform keyframes, okay? So transform, we talked about this in the first webinar. I'm gonna go ahead and just double click on the transform track here. And so this point here is where he does his kick. We're going to move him up here. Okay, so it's like he's like a super Jackie Chan type crazy kick. But we don't want him to move until he actually launches off the ground. That's very important. So I'm going to just click on this transform clip here, or keyframe rather, copy it. And so he basically launches off the ground right here. We'll paste that right there. Okay, so from here to here, he's going to stay on the ground. And then, okay. Okay, and then after he's finished his kick, here is where he basically lands on the ground. So here's where we need to kind of place his position, right here. I'll place it down here. We'll place it maybe over here. Okay, because in the actual project, this character is bowled over. So let's just say something like this. Okay, so and again with this kick, you can create the transition. Okay, so you can use transition keyframes. So from here to here, maybe we want to have this one as a decelerate as well. So we can right click on that keyframe, transition curve, and use decelerate. Okay, so what's going to happen is he's going to, so it's almost like it pauses right here. Okay, and then when he lands, maybe we can have that as a transition curve. We can have that as a end and a bounce. No, that's not going to work. Damping will probably be good. Okay. All right, there you go. Now, when he actually hit the character, he actually hit the bad guy. There's sort of the camera kind of moves really fast. And that's basically just camera movement. Okay, let's talk a little bit about that. I know I'm kind of going over time here, but we'll get to the Q&A in just a moment. The camera movement, and I need to show you the facial animation as well, really quick. But let's just do the camera movement. So from here, as he's doing the kick, let's have our camera. Let's have our camera follow his kick. Okay, so again, if you may recall, the camera. The stuff inside the red square here is what's showing up on the camera when you render. So let's go to our camera track here and make sure we delete all these keyframes. And let's just go ahead and, as he does his hi-ya, so here he is. And then that creates a keyframe in the camera track. You want to follow him with the camera, so then we'll move over here. So we have that transition. And then as he hits the guy, there's like this shaking of the camera. So we can just do something like this. And like this. Oh. You can see that creates like a camera jitter, okay? Just like that. And then follow him back down like this. And we can also use transition keyframes on the cameras as well. So transition keyframe, like a damping. Okay, so it'll be like this. And then, okay. Not the most ideal camera movement, but again, that's how you just basically do it. and you can create transition keyframes and everything like that. Okay, 2 minutes. I'm going to show you facial animation really quickly. So let's say maybe or facial mocap. Okay, now the facial 2D mocap suite, you can purchase this in addition to Crazy Talk Animator, and I'll show you the website in just a moment there. But let's say, for example, is really pleased with his facial animation, with his kick. So what's going to happen when you purchase this 2D mocap suite, you'll have this face 3D tracker. So you're going to see my ugly mug here in just a sec. That's me. Okay. And you can see those little face trackers, okay, on my eyebrows, my eyes, and mouth. Okay. Now, generally, you just want to make sure you have fairly good lighting. Right now, I'm using natural lighting from outside. You just want to make sure your face is fairly well lit. It's not, there's no hard shadows on the face, because if you have hard shadows on your face, it's going to be a little bit difficult for the trackers to pick up your specific facial features. Okay, let's bring me down there. And let's bring up our 3D or cartoon animator here. Let's go to maybe this size right here. And what you need to do then is go to plugins, Motion Live 2D, and Motion Live 2D. Now, again, you want to make sure your mocap tracker is open first. And we'll go over here to click on Face 3D. Make sure that's green. And let's just zoom in on Jim's face a little bit more here. And then you want to make sure your character is selected. So we have Spy Guy right here. Go to Face and select Face 3D. Okay. And you need to set a 0 pose generally is a good idea. So make sure your facial expression down here is neutral. So I need to look at the camera, look directly at the camera, and have a neutral expression like this. Okay. And then you can go ahead and preview. Okay. So there you can see we have the head movement. Ah, wow, wow. You can see the eyebrows move as well. Okay. Close your eyes like this. Make the character's eyes larger or squint. Okay, and you can see the basically that's all there is to it. So it's very similar to the facial puppet. Now, what I recommend doing is for facial expressions, you can go ahead and record. Let's go ahead and record this really quick. I'm going to record some audio. We can record our lip sync in real time. This is fine. We'll just say something like record and say, "Hey everyone, thanks for attending the webinar. I hope you liked my kick." Okay, and then press space, and then we can go into our timeline right here, and let's make this move this over a little bit so we have more space, and we'll go into Spy Guy here and to the face track, and you can see. Hey okay, so what happened is when I recorded that, it created a new clip right here under voice clip. Okay, it created a voice clip right here with my voice, and it also created those automatic keyframes right here, lip sync keyframes, and the facial clip. Okay, so basically all this data here. Now, if you want, you can basically right click. You can delete keyframes here if you want, you know, a little bit less. But let's go ahead and play this back. Hey everyone, thanks for attending the webinar. I hope you liked my kick. Okay, so maybe the lip syncing isn't totally accurate, but you can go ahead and modify the lip syncing there as well. But we're getting a little bit over time right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically refer now to the Q&A session. Okay, so if you want to learn anything more about the facial mocap or all that fun stuff, feel free to ask me. Okay, so apologies for going a little bit over here. Yeah, I'm going to take it to the Q&A section right now. So any questions you have, feel free to put those in the Q&A section there of your GoToWebinar panel, and I will answer those for you. And there you go. So we already have a few, it looks like here. So question from Harry, can you shorten the root motion, maybe just 1 or 2 steps? Yeah, definitely. It's easy to shorten to 2 steps. I could probably do that pretty quick. Okay, So let's go ahead and get out of the facial mocap stuff for now. And I'm just going to focus on this character here. Okay. Let's take our project slider up to here just to get rid of all the other stuff. Okay, so say we have Jim running ahead. We're going to go to animation and apply that same animation. G3 humans, Turner's male, side, I believe side was, is it side run? Oh no, we used the mission one, didn't we? Yeah, let's go to G3 human motions. Was it mission one? This one right here. Oh, nope, move this one. Okay, run forward loop. Okay, so he takes 2 steps. And the only thing you really need to pay attention to here is basically where his feet are. So you can see this is his right foot, and then left foot, and then he does right foot again. Okay, but let's go ahead and take a look at the ending motion. So I'm going to apply the ending motion right here. And if we pay attention to the ending motion, it's his left foot is the last one that goes forward. So he basically has to land on his left foot. So what's going on here is basically right here, the transition is natural between here and there. Now, if you want, you can make it like a and right here as well, okay? So right here, as this foot is forward, you can break this clip right here and just delete the second part. And it should be like a fairly decent transition between these two. Okay. Oh, and again, you have to pay attention to the root, okay? Because it's a root motion, he's gonna bounce, he's gonna jump forward like that. So that's one of the tricky things about root motions, but it's easily resolved because all you really need to do is just change the transform position. So right here at the beginning of our transition area, you can see from here to here is where he'll jump forward. So we need to create a transform keyframe right here. Just by double clicking in the transform track. We open the transform track. Oh, wrong transform. See how it can get confusing? So transform track right here. And then this frame, or no, sorry, this one right here. And then we need to go to this frame here and move him back. So about there, I think, right? Yeah, so it's a little bit off, but here to here. Just moving forward like that. Generally, you can use a prop to make a marker to make it exact, but I think I'll just go ahead with that. So here, okay, so just basically shorten it to like 2 steps instead of 4 steps, okay? Hopefully that answers your question there, Harry. Basically, the ability to, one thing I highly recommend to do is just get familiar with breaking clips and transitioning clips between each other. Very, very important skill to learn in Cartoon Animator, whether it be for facial animation clips or body animation clips. You want to make sure that you're able to create those transitions quite nicely. Okay, so next question is also from Harry. Is there a way to zoom in without changing the frame? Yes, zooming in without changing the frame, you just zoom in. If you don't change the frame, it's not going to change the frame. So maybe you can kind of elaborate if you mean something else, but you can zoom in and out without changing the frame, no problem. So let's just go on to the next question here then. Okay, so Brian asks a good question here. When setting control point grids for deform and transform, are they symmetrical by default? Example 2 by 2, 2 by 2, right? Yeah. So when you set those control grid points for facial animation are actually set by default. So you can go to 2D motion key. Oops, wrong one. Face key editor. Let's get rid of our Q&A panel here. So the deform, let's say, for example, the left eye, you can change to 3 by 3 or 2 by 2. Some of them are default. Some of them have different defaults depending on the resolution. Like the ear here, you can see default. There's different. You can also do this for props as well. But yeah, generally there's 3 by 3, 2 by 2, and the default. But sometimes there's more depending on the size of your item. I think which one did we use that had more? Yeah, the nostril. For some reason, the nostril has a higher resolution. You can see the default is 3 by 3 right here. And then the 3 by 3 actually changes it to 2 by 2 for some reason. And then this one here is 1 by 1. But yeah, it really all depends on the individual sprites. And it can be kind of wacky depending on the facial feature, depending on the character you're using, you know, which developer created it, and all sorts of other stuff. There's other variables that can come into play there as well. All right. Hope that answers your question there, Brian. Just want to remind people that I'm answering questions from the Q&A window, not the chat window. Okay, it's because I see some people are putting stuff in the chat window. Okay, so let's go to the next question here from James Ferguson. When you deform the character's nose, you set the default position second. If you wanted to do this first, what is the process to set it then? Okay, so my default workflow, if I want to create a facial animation, oh gosh, we have to take off the camera animation here. Let's use good old Jim here. He has a confused look on his face. That was my last last expression for my facial mocap. The question again. Let me just go back to the question again. Oh yeah, right. I was going to talk about my basically the workflow for me when I do any sort of facial animation is I set a beginning point and an end point, because generally when you have a character talking, if you watch a cartoon like I don't know, any cartoon, let's say SpongeBob SquarePants, okay, he'll have kind of a happy expression on his face, and then he'll be like, "What are you doing, Patrick?" And as he says, "What are you doing, Patrick?" his face will scrunch down into like some angry, suspicious expression, and then after that, after he says that, a lot of the time it'll go back to the semi suspicious expression, shall we say. So say he starts with a semi suspicious expression, and it'll go to like more suspicious as he's talking, and then back to the default suspicious, we'll call it, okay? So the workflow that I use is this, okay? I go to, regardless of what I'm using, I'll go to the face key editor. Let's use the templates, for example. Okay, this is a good, easy way to do it. So we have angry one, okay? Or let's use evil one, okay? And again, that's going to be showing up in the face track under facial clip here. Okay, so there's in the face track, there's our evil one keyframe. So say, for example, he's going to say something between, we're at frame 687 and frame like 720. Okay, I'm going to basically have a keyframe here and a keyframe here. Now you can also copy and paste that keyframe as well, which is another easy way to do it. Copy and paste it here. Or no, you can't. In the future, you have to do this. Basically, you can only copy and paste within this clip area here at the top. Okay, so just be aware of that. What's floating? Oh, there's actually snow. I forgot I put snow in the scene. Okay, so we have some beautiful snow. Okay, so he's angry from here to here. But say, for example, we wanted to, like, you know, change some expressions. So for example, we don't want him as evil from here to here. So we can say he's less evil here, adds a keyframe there, and a little less evil here as well. And there you go. So he's going to be evil, and then evil to less evil, and then less evil to evil again. So in between here, we can probably do something like, you know, record voice. I'm going to just record my own voice. What are you doing, Patrick? Okay, and then press OK. What are you doing, Patrick? It's much too long, so we're going to have to extend this. What are you doing, Patrick? Okay, so we probably want to time that with the voice. What are you doing, Patrick? Okay, so you can see he kind of, what are you doing, Patrick? Goes back to that default evil expression. Okay, that's the workflow I follow, and then you can do that in like, you know, 3 minutes once you get used to it. Oh, there's my face again. Okay, next question here. Let's go to the next one. Can you link two heads to follow the same movement? Brian Jensen asks. You can't link two heads, but basically you can save a facial animation and apply it to another character. And the way you do that is by using that collect clip track there. Again, so collect clip. Say, for example, we wanted to save this, "What are you doing, Patrick?" Expression. What? Okay, so in the collect clip track, you just click and drag. "What are you doing, Patrick?" I think it. Patrick. To here, so we can click and drag this. "What are you doing, Patrick?" Okay, so this gray area, I'm going to right click in the gray area there and select. You can export the facial motion, or you can export the perform. We're going to export the perform in this case. I'll just export it to my desktop. We'll call it super perform. Okay, and just save that to the desktop. So that way we can apply it to other characters. So let's go ahead and find our evil dude here. Now perform, you can see super perform right here. We can just simply click and drag it onto our character. Like this. Doing Patrick. What are you doing, Patrick? Where do you go? He went somewhere. Let's zoom out. What are you doing? Oh yeah, because basically our character is way over here. What you have to be aware that when you do a perform, he's going to be somewhere in this scene. Let's try and find him in the scene manager. Spy guy. Leon. Oh, he just disappeared behind the snow background, I think. I hope so, anyways. Oh, where is he? I may have encountered some sort of bug. I'm sure it has to do with basically where the character is. Let's try it on the female character. Doing Patrick. What are you doing, Patrick? Interesting. Generally, you should be able to do that by right-clicking and selecting, rather in the clip track there. What are you doing? Selecting whatever. But you can also export facial animation and just export as well. But the perform actually contains the audio as well. So just be aware that the perform contains the facial, body, and audio. If you export only the facial motion, let's try that, only the facial motion. What are you doing, Pat? What are you doing, Pat? You should be able to just export only the facial motion, but you may have to export the audio. Let's call that facial. And we'll apply it to the same character down here. Let's actually just right click on this character, move the animation. Yeah, he has a lot of animation. And let's apply that to him. Let's apply that facial. What are you doing, Patrick? Okay, so if you export the facial motion, it'll also do the audio as well. That's supposed to be reserved for perform, but again, it just seems like it just applies the same. Okay, so here, facial. What are you doing, Patrick? And that can be applied to any character. Okay, it should be able to be applied to any character, just like that, if you save it as a facial motion. Seems like there might have been a bug with the perform on that particular character. There's always bugs that pop up with different characters applying different motions to different characters. But yeah, that's how you do it anyways. Collect clip and save and transfer. And all you have to do is apply those at the same time to both the characters. Yeah, Gregory's asking, what happened to facial mocap? Yeah, I didn't really get to that until the end. I kind of lost track of myself doing the animation. Animation is actually one of my favorite things to do in Cartoon Animator and iClone and all that stuff. So, when you kind of get too into something, you kind of lose track of time sometimes. But yeah, any questions about the facial mocap, I'm more than happy to answer those. And you can always email me later as well if you need to. Okay, Sheila asks the question, sometimes when I bring in a prop or a character, it's tethered to the scene. And when I change the object's position, it moves along the tether line. What makes that happen and how do I stop it? So what may be the issue, Sheila, is you have to make sure your item is a prop, if it's a prop or if it's part of the scene. So let's take a look at say, for example, let's just start a new project really quick and throw a couple props in here, just to kind of refresh everything because there's too much stuff on the screen. So let's have a prop. Let's create a coffee shop. So we have a wall. We have a floor, just like that. We have a chair. Chair seems pretty big. Just throw that in there. And we have a counter. Oops. Okay, this looks more like an office. Man, it's a pretty sad office. But see, we have all this stuff, right? If you go to the scene manager, you can see this is all under the prop category. What I can do is I can click on everything. If I click on prop, it'll select everything in our scene, by the way. And I can right click and select convert to scene. And now it's all part of a scene. And I can move it all together just like this, all right? If I just select scene, if I select wall, the wall can move separately. But if I select scene, the entire scene will move, okay? If I select the wall, for example, or let's select the chair and the desk by control clicking, we can right click and convert to prop, okay? So now our scene is gonna be the wall and the floor, okay? And the prop is going to be this stuff. We can also move these separately. Chair can move separately, and the counter can move separately. But if you select prop here, they'll both move. If you select scene, the scene stuff will move. Okay, hopefully that's clear to you, Sheila, because there's two categories for items in your scene, items in your stage rather. They can be scene items or prop items. Okay, and as I mentioned in part 1 of this webinar series, you can save entire scenes. So if you have all these props assembled and everything like that, and you want to save it as a scene, well, that's what you do. You have to go to your content manager, you have to go to scene, and you have to go to custom scene, and save it as a scene, okay? So we just press plus and super cool wall, okay? And then if we started a new project, we can just throw in, double click on super cool wall, and there it is again. Okay, so that's our scene. Okie dokes. Hopefully that's clear for you there, Sheila. Okay, Harry asks, can you use more than one monitor for the program, one for the timeline and one for the stage? Yeah, definitely. You just have to set up your monitors that way. We support dual monitors for sure. Unfortunately, I can't broadcast dual monitors on this webinar, but if I could, I would. It's just easier if everyone can see everything. So I just avoid using dual monitors for this stuff. Okay, Brian asks, what if you wear glasses? I'm assuming this is for the facial mocap. Glasses for the facial mocap is not highly recommended, but honestly, I've done it wearing glasses before and it's decent results. Although obviously ideal results, you want to have good lighting, good, clean, even lighting, and not wear glasses and not have a big thick beard or something like that, because sometimes a big thick beard will distort or occlude your mouth, and it won't have the best lip syncing or mouth results. So just be aware of that. But yeah, glasses not recommended, but I've done it before. But if you want like good quality, I would avoid it. So Deborah mentions here, I have Cartoon Animator 3, or Crazy Talk Animator 3 is what it was called. Is what you demoed possible in that version? To be honest, most of it is possible. I believe there hasn't been any major changes to the core animation tools. Obviously, aside from facial mocap's not possible with Crazy Talk Animator 3, but I believe if you have Crazy Talk Animator 3, most of the animation, if not all the animation, animation stuff I did is possible. Maybe not transition curves, but then again, I'm not. I can't remember. I think that may have been part of it, but it should be okay. Let's go to the next animation here for our next question. This quarantine has made me crazy. Is it possible to make a looping idle animation on a free bone character? Is there a tutorial for this? Yeah, there's definitely possible to make a looping animation for a freebone character. Let's do that really quick. What do we have as a let's make a looping animation for our character's arm. Remember we had that arm in the previous webinar. Images, was it? Yeah, hand arm. Let's make this disembodied arm have a an animation. So again, I'm going through this really quick because we covered this in day 2. Okay, if you want some explanation, just feel free to ask. There we go. We have the, so we're going to have an idle animation for this disembodied arm. See, it's like from the Addams family. It's like that disembodied hand. So again, we would have to go to our keyframe editor here. Let's just go to frame like 10. And we'll take the bone and maybe just move it like this. Go to frame 20, take the bone and move it like that. And so we'll just have this wave. Okay, and then we'll just copy and paste that a few times. Zoop, zoop, zoop. So we have this. Whoop. What the? This should go back to what's going on here. What did we copy and paste here? These two, right? That should. Apologies for the quick mouse movements here. Nope, not going to work. We have to go back to here and take this nubbin back down. There we go. And then maybe we have to do it one at a time. Although you should be able to do the group. Maybe it's because I'm using the bone nub instead. But anyways, we'll say this is an idle motion. It should be able to be looped, no problem. I think, I'm not sure why. But yeah, we'll just, again, collect clip and let's make sure that we have it loopable anyways by pasting these keyframes back here. Maybe it's only doing the one bone. This is so weird. Oh, okay, anyways, we'll just take it back to reset. Stupid thing. Okay, so this is our idle motion. So we click and drag and collect clip. We can right click and select add to action menu. We'll call it idle, enter. And then we can just remove object animation if we want, doesn't really matter. So when we want our arm to idle, we go right click, action menu, idle. Okay, and then it's in our motion track. So we just click on it, make sure that we have loop enabled and loop it. Okay, so now we have this disembodied idle arm thing. Okay, so that's how you would make an idle for a free bone actor. All right, hopefully that answers your question there, anonymous attendee. How mysterious. Thomas Duval asks, when I designed a character, the motions did not sync up well with the character. The motions did not resemble the character motions of the original characters. How do I sync my character to resemble the original shipped characters? Motions did not sync up well. So some characters, some custom characters may have different bone proportions. And this can cause a problem with your characters because all the animations that come default with Cartoon Animator 4 are generally synced to a default character. Now, if you have a character with large bones or they're very different or you've modified it significantly, there will be potential clipping or bone issues. So just be aware of that. The animations can be applied to every single character regardless of proportions. But sometimes if those proportions are too small or too long or too tight or whatever, then that can create different results. So just be aware of that. Other than that, I'm not really sure how else I can resolve that. Maybe you can provide me with an email, and I can help you answer that separately, because I'm not really clear on what exactly the question here is, Thomas. So just maybe feel free to elaborate, or email me kai@reallusion.com, and I'll be able to help you out with that. Next question is from James McNeely. Can you discuss leap motion, leap profile, and leap motion options? So right now we don't have, in the current release, we don't have leap motion available. So we don't have the hand animation available for the current release. That's coming in the very near future here. I've already been testing it. But unfortunately, I can't really bring it up right now since it's sort of still in beta. We don't want to show incomplete or less than stellar, especially the UI is kind of messed up still. So, but yeah, I can't discuss that, unfortunately, James, because I don't have that. It's not available for release yet. But yeah, there's options for it, and there's really cool hand animation options. It also, a couple of the scenarios that I did like playing a piano, for example. So I had my character seated at a 90-degree angle, and I just kind of hovered my hands over top of the leap motion controller and played the piano. And the cool thing is, because of human IK, when you move your hands forward, your character's whole body is moving forward. So you can really do a really cool sort of thing, like an Elton John, almost at a piano, just swaying back and forth according to your hand movements, which is pretty cool. There are some really cool examples that you can use, and you'll see those in the upcoming weeks here as part of our updates on our YouTube channel or through email or whatever. So make sure you subscribe to the newsletter. All right. Having Patrick and an ungrateful victim look at the same points. Yeah, thanks, Brian. Okay, so a question from Harry here. Do you have a tutorial for capturing voice with the lip movements, not mocap? Yeah, we have tutorials for, that's like automatic lip sync, basically, if it's not motion capture. So you can go to like Cartoon Animator. Again, guys, if you are not aware, we do have the Learning Center, which I highly recommend checking out for anyone. Get this panel out of the way here. Learning Center tutorials. All these tutorials right here for Cartoon Animator 4. And just go to facial animation, or there should be some for just animation. 360 head animation probably is a good one. 2D facial mocap. 2D character animation. Yeah, so 2D character animation has the face key edits, face puppet basics, lip sync basics, all these basics right here. So just go into 2D character animation. There's a bunch of oh man, I did these ages ago now, it seems. These are actually for Crazy Talk Animator 3, but as you can probably guess, none of the basically all the bones are still the same. All the meat and potatoes of these tools are still the same. So yeah, check out these tutorials. I'll throw that in the chat window for you guys. Where did my Zoom panel go? Oh, there it is. I'm moving it around. All panelists and attendees can view this. All right. There you go. Let's go to the next question. Another question from Harry. How do you make movie-like cuts? Like over one shoulder to see one character and then the reverse over facing the other character? Oh man, Harry, that's, as you may know, in a 2D software, that's a little bit difficult. Like, it's not very often in a 2D cartoon you see over the shoulder shots. In terms of the 2D cinematography, it's generally you're having characters just facing each other and facing the screen as well. Yeah, you can't really do that unless you have a backwards, unless you have a rear view of your character. You can definitely do it in iClone because they're 3D characters, and we have tons of tutorials on that. But for 2D characters, it's a little bit more tricky, unfortunately. So, okay, Brian, yeah. Halloween's still a while away, Brian. So hopefully, yeah, hopefully we'll have another webinar at that point, and hopefully we'll get done with all this coronavirus nonsense. By then, we'll have something else to be scared about in Halloween. David Palmasano asks, does facial mocap only work with iPhone? No, so we do have the iPhone capability. But if you have just a regular webcam, you can just get the 2D facial motion capture suite. I'll show you which one I mean here. It's very important to understand this. So we have this Pro bundle. So as you can see, this doesn't have the facial mocap bundle, okay? This facial mocap bundle is the one you want to take a look at. This 2D facial mocap suite. So any of these packages with the 2D facial mocap suite, basically it allows you to use your webcam. You don't need to purchase an iPhone or anything like that. You can just use your computer's regular webcam. This 2D facial mocap suite, if we just click it, you can find the product page here. You can purchase this separately as well if you want. Okay, it's an add-on. And the premium suite contains the iPhone one as well. But to be honest, like, you know, I think the results for the regular 3D facial profile are pretty good. You know, I probably should trying to be saying like, oh yeah, I get the iPhone one too. But to be honest, I haven't had any problems with the Face 3D profile, which I think has been fantastic. All right. So Mary asks, how can I make a character descend into a hole? If I had the correct items, the correct assets or props to show you, I probably would be able to. I can probably whip up something similar. The techniques will be the same. But generally, it's just going to have a character that's different layers. The character has to jump into a hole. The hole will be on the rear layer, and the foreground will be on the front layer. Let's take a look at props here. Something like what was I just in? A coffee shop, yeah. Okay, so if we had this coffee shop floor, for example, and we wanted to take this into Photoshop. Okay, it's going to be converted to an image element, no worries. Hopefully Adobe's not going to ask me to log in again. Because all I'm going to do is just create a hole in this floor here. That's such a pretty picture. Oh, yeah, hey, I got to log in again. Fantastic. See if I can remember my password this time. Oops. Now it's going to be like, fill out this survey. No, okay, we're good. Oh, for Pete's sake. Okay. Sorry, guys. What we're going to do is we're going to pretend that this floor right here, it has a hole in it, okay? So basically what you would do is you would have this character jump from the foreground to the background. Okay, let's just stretch it out maybe like this. Okay, and we'll just get our template character in here. Because this is kind of a useful little tip. What I was going to do is make a little hole in the side here, but okay, so let's just go ahead and bring this dude forward. Let's make it a little bit smaller. So let's see, he's jumping off the edge of this building here. Do we have a jump motion somewhere? Probably. Stunt probably has a jump, doesn't it? Slide, run, jump. Okay, we have a run and a jump. Cool. 0, 1, 0, 1. Okay. Okay, so let's just do this. I'm going to just stretch this out to make it a little bit longer since it was very fast. Okay, so we have this one. Okay, so we'll just say he starts here, and he's going to jump off the ledge onto another building below. So we'll have him right here. Starts right here, and then and by this point, we'll have him further back on the z-axis, and then here we'll have him down here. Okay, I guess he probably needs to be even further back on the z-axis there. Let's go transform. Yeah, that should work. Okay, so we have him. Okay, just jumping, and it'd be the same thing if there is, a hole in the side, but of course the black part of the hole would have to be behind the character instead of in front of him. So you just basically have to have 3 layers essentially. Okay. Yay. Okay, that's how you move a character. Basically, you want to move the character back on the z-axis. Okay, and like I mentioned before, you can also go into 3D view here and take a look at that in more detail. So if you zoom in closer. Okay, so right now he's in front of that, and then now he's behind it. So just like this, okay? In front and behind. All right, so just be aware of that. You can see moving in front, and then behind. All right, and of course you can take a look at the Z values as well up here. That's probably an easier way to look at it. If you look at the Z value up here, 76, notice the Z value will go down. Okay, so now it's at negative 69, and as he jumps, it goes back. Okay, this Z axis up here, and this item right here is just at Z value of 0. Okay, just always pay attention to the Z axis numbers there. Okay, so Pavel asks, will you be able to use facial mocap for mocap animation of the hands, or you have to buy other software? No, you're going to be able, I believe with the hand animation, with the hand capture, you may have to buy a hand profile, gear profile. Because with iClone, basically the way it works is you buy the plugin, which is called the Motion Live plugin. And here it's basically called the Motion Suite, 2D Motion Suite. And what happens is every motion capture device that you want to use, like a perception neuron, body motion capture, or Manus VR gloves or something like that, or Leap Motion hand capture, you're going to have to buy a separate gear profile, I believe, for that. Don't hold me to that. I do believe that you're going to have to pay a little bit for that, though. I'm not sure if it's included, but don't hold me to that. Just pay attention to the latest newsletters, and they should be able to kind of inform you about that. But it won't be very much for the Leap Motion. It'll be like a tiny bit of money or something probably. For the iClone, it's only like $99, which is fairly inexpensive when it comes to motion capture devices. Okay, yeah, so I think we're done with our Q&A section there. We answered a few questions, and apologies again for going overtime. So yeah, that brings us to the very end of our A to Z webinar series. Thanks so much for everyone who kind of stuck with us here. And I know this third day of the webinar, we kind of had to get through a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff to learn about animation, but hopefully I helped out a couple of you guys with some tips and tricks on how to accomplish different things in terms of animation. And as always, feel free to email me and send over your questions. Make sure, more importantly, to fill out the survey and get that 10% discount from the content store. And it gives us feedback for future topics for our animations and all that stuff. All right, so hopefully you guys are all staying safe out there from the virus as well. Just be careful, everyone. And it's a great opportunity to stay inside and learn more about Cartoon Animator 4. So yeah, that's probably what I'm going to be doing. So hopefully we can all do that together. So yeah, thanks everyone again for attending so much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. And I'll see you in future tutorials and in the future webinars as well. All right. Take care, guys.